The following is a presentation from Creation Today Ministries and is made possible by the faithful support from our creation partners. To them, we say thank you. To learn how you can become a Creation Today partner, visit us at creationtoday.org.
Everybody, including Misaki, please help me welcome my guest, Dr. Marcus Ross. Dr. Ross, if you can jump on here, I hope you're doing well tonight. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you so much for hosting me this evening, Eric. This is fantastic. Great chance to talk to all the people that you have assembled. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, when I get the chance to talk to somebody who's done so much research and can take years and years and years of study and condense it down into just a couple minutes from me, I'm going, I think I need to be sending you a check, okay? Because this is priceless to be able to get this. We really, really do appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thanks.
How long have you been studying?
It's a great opportunity for me. It's really fun to get a chance to teach something I get to do. I'm a professor at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. I've been teaching there for 16 years. And actually, this is my last year. I'm ending my time at Liberty so I can go full time with this company that you just mentioned. Thank you. Cornerstone Educational Supply. So the nice thing is it's a good move. No hard feelings with Liberty. I'm just moving on and saying, okay, I'd rather do one job rather than two. And I'm looking forward to Dr. Timothy Brophy. He's a biologist, and he's going to be heading up the Center for Creation Studies at Liberty University beginning next semester. And I'll still be in Lynchburg, still working, still doing creation research. So really looking forward to seeing what the next chapter in both Dr. Brophy's and my life are as we make a little musical chairs going around here.
So you've set up a great foundation there. You're leaving it in good hands at Liberty, and we appreciate their stand because let's face it, there's not a lot of colleges that are standing firm on this. Can you give me your 30-second take on that?
Yeah, well, it's one way to look at it and say, boy, there's just not a whole lot of colleges that affirm young earth creation. On the other hand, there are more colleges that affirm young earth creation now than there probably was 20 or 30 years ago. So I'm looking at that more from a positive standpoint. There's a lot more colleges that have been willing to move a little bit further on this topic, take a little bit riskier of a position by saying, yes, we are going to affirm precisely what the Bible says about this and not back down and not compromise. So when I think of Liberty University, it's certainly been standing strong on this topic for many decades, ever since really its founding in 1971. But you've got great schools with Master's College. You've got Cedarville University, Pensacola, right next door to you guys. Bob Jones, you've got Warner University, just scores and scores of them. Obviously, Answers in Genesis has a Creation Colleges website. And there's also many that are not on there simply because they didn't sign the AIG statement in particular. But there's other schools out there that are affirming of the young earth or at least open to it. So think of it from a historic standpoint. I think Henry Morris and Dwayne Gish, the old guys who got a lot of this stuff started back in the 60s and 70s, would be encouraged to see the number of schools out there and the platform that things like Creation Today and the other ministries have. They would have never been able to imagine, in those early days, the sort of reach that we could have through something like the internet. It's amazing. It really is. It's like magic, only better.
I would have started a website that actually talked about all the colleges out there that hold to a we call it biblical creation, that look, what the Bible says is true. But AIG had already started that. So when I started the Creation Network, we had creationspeakers.org and searchcreation.org and visitcreation.org and thought, well, creationcollege.org and AIG's got it. I'm like, so I just point people right to them and say, man, go check it out. Thank you for being part of an organization that stands on the authority of God's word and says, we're starting and stopping right here. And let's let everything else filter through that lens. Really, really appreciate it. So you actually, okay, I got a dinosaur toe bone here. I've got some dinosaur eggs. These are genuine dinosaur eggs right here, genuine dinosaur toe bone. So we could actually take these to a lab and see if there's anything. What would happen if I tried to carbon date my fossils here?
Well, one thing that you wouldn't want to do is bring the whole thing there because first off, all you need for carbon dating is a very, very small sample of the material itself. But what's going to happen to that sample is a nightmare in terms of the different scientific procedures that are going to be done. The sample, you're going to want to take a deep sample, not from the outside, because there's all sorts of carbon from your hands and from the outside world that could contaminate this. So you want to get a sample from deep inside that's not going to be in contact with the outside world. And then that material is going to be sent to a lab for processing. It's going to be soaked in a very strong acid in order to liberate the carbon from it. It's then going to be bathed in some bases, followed by more acids and bases back and forth. And eventually it's also going to be, after several procedures, incinerated and then recondensed in the form of graphite. And then once it's in graphite, it's going to be incinerated again, and it's going to be passed atom by atom through something called an accelerated mass spectrometer, which is going to be able to identify carbon-14 atoms from carbon-12 atoms one at a time as it goes through the machine. So whatever you send them, you're not going to get back. You send something tiny. The good news is there's so much carbon in just a tiny, tiny little fragment that you don't have to worry. There's plenty in there for the lab to work with.
So you literally have to destroy the sample that you send, and they break it all the way down to each individual atom and tell what each individual atom is that's in this thing in order to tell how much radioactive carbon, how much carbon. Okay.
That's right. So unfortunately, the app idea is just not going to.
I'm like, I want the app, man. I think that, well, what I'm thinking is I love doing like plays on things. So I think doing an app would be kind of funny. And, you know, when you point at your camera at it, like Google and stuff, identify different objects, it identifies it and it says, oh, 6,000 years old, you know, and it just keeps giving you. I bought the website freeancestrytest.com, and I haven't developed it yet, but I want to do it where, hey, you put in a little bit of information, and then it's got this spinning wheel, and it's like checking this database now, cross comparison this and all this, and then it comes back, oh, your ancestors are Adam and Eve, and then it shares the gospel. I just think that would be awesome.
Perfect.
I got to get that done. I need that's another job though, and you know how we are with multiple jobs. Okay, so the world today, by and large, if you say radiometric dating or carbon dating, automatically assumes, oh, that's the evidence that these bones and these eggs and other, biomaterial is hundreds of thousands, millions, even billions of years old. Matter of fact, I want to launch this because I saw a clip on YouTube, and I grabbed this clip and I went, okay, I want you to argue with this guy. All right. This is literally what most young people are hearing. Kent, play our clip.
The carving of Mount Rushmore was completed in 1941, but the rocks it was carved into were completed quite a bit earlier than that, 1.7 billion years ago. How does a geologist know that? And how do they know that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old? The answer is a technique called radiometric dating, which lets us tell the age of certain types of rock. Zircon crystals, for example, can trap atoms of radioactive uranium inside them, as well as its daughter isotope, lead. So, measure the proportion of uranium to lead in a zircon crystal, and you can figure out when it must have formed. Take this tiny zircon, for example, which would fit comfortably on the head of a pin. Believe it or not, this tiny zircon, which comes from Western Australia, is the oldest piece of Earth we've ever found. It's an absolutely mind-blowing 4.4 billion years old, and comes from when the Earth was only 150 million years after its formation. The zircon was dated using two different isotopes of uranium, uranium-235 and uranium-238. This provided a built-in cross-check, as you had two different clocks keeping time within the crystal. Whichever clock you look at, they give the same result. The uranium's been trapped in that zircon since it formed 4.4 billion years ago.
Well, Dr. Ross, I know he went on to talk about carbon dating, but it was about a 6-minute clip, and I didn't want to take all that time. Okay, who's right and who's wrong here? Help us out. Take us on a journey through carbon dating and tell us, and radiometric dating in general, tell us what's really going on.
Sure. Well, radiometric dating is one of the harder questions for young Earth creationists to respond to. I'm going to lay that out. My background is in paleontology and in geology. So this is an area that I had to spend a good bit of time studying. And when I had to do my examinations and things like that for my PhD work, I was grilled especially hard on radioactive dating by my committee because they actually knew that I was a young Earth creationist and just wanted to make sure that I knew what the typical sorts of answers and issues were. They didn't want to graduate somebody that had never really had to grapple and wrestle with this. So they threw some pretty tough arguments at me, and radiometric dating is one of those. So if I can pull up a couple of slides, do you think that would be
please? Yeah.
Use? All right, great.
And while you share that, you went to a university that was not a Christian college.
That's right. My undergraduate was from Penn State University in State College, and go Nittany Lions, still love them. From there, I went to the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in Rapid City, South Dakota. So that picture of Mount Rushmore strikes real close to home because I was only about a 25-minute drive from my house when I lived in South Dakota. So I know the Harney Peak granite, which is the name of that particular rock in which the faces of the presidents have been carved. So we can talk about the Harney Peak granite in a little bit. And then from there, I boomeranged back to my home state of Rhode Island to work on my PhD in paleontology. Working with Dr. David Festovsky. He's a very well-known dinosaur paleontologist, written a textbook on these sorts of things. So that's some of the background. You can tell from those schools, I spent my entire academic career in state-run schools. I didn't spend a single day at a Christian college. I was never in some place that affirmed a young earth creation. My K through 12 was all public school. So I was a stranger in a strange land for a lot of the time that I was going to school and working through college.
I think this is going to be fascinating because so many people really do think that this is one of the pillars of evolution worldview. And I really do believe the science has just turned it right on its head. So I can't wait.
It really is. Without a deep time for the age of the Earth, biological evolution doesn't have the time to get itself going. So if you want to go from goo to you via the zoo, as the old booklet used to say, you've got to have enough time for those biological processes to do that if they could, right? Granting the idea that maybe it's possible, it's only possible if you have billions of years worth of time. So if you erase the billions of years worth of time, then evolution simply is a non-starter. It's not even a question at this point. So here, I've got a couple of slides from one of my creation studies classes that I've taught here at Liberty University. And we're kind of jumping in midstream. This is a longer couple of lessons dealing with geological dating of several different types. And so we jump into a radioactive dating method. So the first type that we won't talk about here today are what are called the relative dating techniques. And these are the ones that are simply designed to try and help a geologist figure out when they're looking at a big group of rocks, which of the rocks in front of me or behind me or beneath me or above me is older or younger, which ones were laid down first, or what process happened second. It's all about trying to get a relative age of things, just like if you had three people standing there and you just called one of them son, dad, and grandpa, right? You don't need to know how old they are in order to understand the relative ages of them, right? So rocks, it's kind of the same sort of thing. Now, that was the first style of radioactive dating, of geological dating. That was the sort of thing that was being worked out in the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s that gave us our geological column in the first place. So we'll come back to that in a sec. But now we've got these radioactive dating methods, and radioactivity was only discovered in the early 1900s. And it was carbon-14 was actually one of the first applications of radioactive dating ever done. It was theorized first, and about 10 years later, they had a procedure down to start working on it. So these use.
And do you remember what year that was, radiocarbon dating?
The first radiocarbon dates, I believe, started coming out in the 1950s, and it was in the late 30s or so that the idea of radioactive dating came about. Like they said, yeah, this is something that we could theoretically do, and actually wasn't a difficult type of project. I mean, it's difficult, but not like an impossible sort of thing.
Got it. Okay.
So when we're talking about radiometric dating, these are the ages that are supposed to give us the millions and the billions of years or thousands or whatever. And so they're going to involve having radioactive isotopes, these materials that are kind of unstable and will change over time into some other type of atom. So things like carbon-14 and uranium are all inherently unstable, right? That's why we call them parents, because they're very unstable. No, that's a terrible joke. Anyway,
I just got that's good.
I tell my students jokes in my classes come like getting, it's like getting ramen noodles at Sam's Club, right? I mean, you're going to get a lot of them, but in the end, you still might not be terribly satisfied. It's not a good meal. It's just filling. So.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, so when we blend these two types of geological dating methods together, what we get is on the one side of this column is a young Earth interpretation, and on the left-hand side is an old Earth interpretation, and in the middle is basically the data. Okay, so these different names that we have, like Cambrian and Devonian, Cretaceous and Pleistocene, these were names that were developed based on relative dating techniques. Not the radioactive ones, simply the who's older, who's younger. And by recognizing that there were some patterns in the fossils, and these fossil patterns were pretty consistent everywhere that you went. And so people started calling something Cambrian rocks because of this place in the Cambria Hills of Wales that tended to have certain types of fossils, like trilobites in them. And when they compared those fossils to ones that were out by Devonshire, England, they noticed that the fossils in Devonshire were different. They called those Devonian fossils. Okay, so a lot of our names come from places or characteristics. So something like Carboniferous, this is where all the coal beds are found in places like Europe and in England. And over here on the eastern side of the United States, all of our coal beds are found in what we in the United States split apart as Mississippian and Pennsylvania, right? So this middle column here represents what we often call the geological column or the geological timescale. And it's just a relative one. Now, my old age colleagues say that radiometric dating is going to give us a set of numbers that we can assign to that on the left that's going to say that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Young Earth creationists look at this same column of rock and say, no, we think that this is a record of thousands of years going back from creation week, with a lot of rocks formed during Noah's flood, and some of them formed after Noah's flood is done. And wherever we put the boundaries, we can argue about those sorts of things, but that's the basics for understanding geology from a young Earth versus an old Earth perspective. So these radioactive isotopes, okay, that's a fancy word for atoms that can have different masses. Same type of atom, like uranium, can have a couple of different weights to it, okay? So some atoms are unstable, they're radioactive. Those are the ones that we call parents. And they decay into another atom. And the thing that they become, we call the daughter. Now, like real daughters, those daughters are not always stable. Sometimes they're stable, sometimes they're unstable. Depends on the daughter, right? So
more ramen, I got that. That was good.
That's right, more ramen, it's coming at you. That was chicken, don't worry, the beef's coming later. So carbon-14 will decay into nitrogen-14 in one step, and nitrogen-14 is entirely stable, and it's just going to stay that way until apparently Jesus comes back. It's just going to be that forever. Uranium, on the other hand, has, let's say uranium-238 is one type. That's going to decay into an atom called thorium, but thorium itself is not stable. So it's an unstable daughter that's going to decay, and then there's going to be another one and another one and another. It's about 12 steps before you ultimately get to the stable product of uranium decay, which is lead. Okay, so sometimes you have a one step, sometimes you have a dozen, and some of these are faster than others. And geologists measure those speeds and record them in terms of what they call a half-life. And this is getting back to how that video is going to get these ages for that ancient zircon or for the Harney Peak granite. The half-life is a usually estimated amount of time that it's going to take for 1/2 of a sample of radioactive material to decay into that final stable daughter product. Now, the way they figure this out is they will take some of these radioactive materials and put them into a sophisticated piece of equipment that can recognize radioactive decay. So when the uranium starts to decay, it recognizes, oh, this kind of particle was sent out. And they start to measure all of that. And they'll only measure it for, months, weeks, years, maybe. But from that, they're going to extrapolate what the half-life is going to be. Nobody's been around for 4.5 billion years, right? I mean, evolutionists and young Earth creationists both agree humans haven't been around for 4.5 billion years watching this sort of stuff. We only discovered radioactivity 100 years ago. So we have to take what we've learned, and that gets extrapolated with the assumption, and this is a big assumption, that there's nothing that has ever changed the pace of the radioactive decay over time. So think of it like a pie diagram. I love pie. I think pie is probably the best form of cake that one can ever eat. And my wife has planted, no word of a lie, Eric, 17 blueberry bushes in my front yard. 17. Wow. Because she doesn't want to share with the birds. And so my wife grew up in South Dakota, where nothing grows except for grass and the cattle that eat them. And so when we first got married, we moved back to Rhode Island where I was working on my PhD, and summer came around. It was blueberry season. We went to the store, we bought some fresh blueberries. And I said, great, can we make a pie? She had been watching videos, making apple pies, it's been great. And she said, no. I said, but darling, right? It's like,
yeah, what do you mean?
We
no?
have blueberries here. And she said, no, I will not ruin these blueberries. If you want a blueberry pie, you have to buy your own blueberries. And so I had to go back to the store. We're college students, we're poor. This is a substantial amount of our monthly food budget. I had to go get 2 more pints of blueberries and brought those to her like a little, offering. Would you please, make me a pie with these? And she said, yes, I'll ruin your blueberries, but not those other ones. Those are mine. And I think that's because my wife believes that the blueberry represents the original tree of life in the Garden of Eden. She felt that the only way one could properly respect God's creation of the blueberry was to eat them one at a time and raw. That was the best.
Wow.
But she discovered something, and that is, though we are Christians through and through, magic happens when you take fresh blueberries and butter and sugar and wrap them in a flaky crust. I mean, I don't know if Aslan came by and he breathed on my stove, or Gandalf sitting there whispering some deep elvish, I don't know what happens, but something comes out and it's a beautiful thing. So let's say that I come home one night and I see a pie there, blueberry pie, and a little note from my wife. It says, I love you. I'm like, right. I did something right.
Yeah.
This is great. I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter. There will be no dinner tonight. There will only be pie, right? It's a glorious evening. The next morning, I'm a little dehydrated. It's a little wonky, but that's all right. So I eat half the pie that night. Try not to tell too many people about that, but it happens.
That's a lot of pie.
That's a lot of pie. Hopefully the rest of the day, there really weren't any calories being thrown in my way. So the next day, turns out the kids are at Awana. Well, I'm not a jerk, right? I'm not a terrible husband. I didn't eat the whole pie. I'm going to only eat half, right? So half of the pie goes away. The next night, I don't know, it's women's Bible study. She's not around. I'm going to eat the other half of the pie. Now, if you came over to my house and you saw that there was 1/8 of a pie remaining in that pie tin, and you knew that every night I ate half of the pie, you'd be able to tell how long I've been eating that pie, right? An eighth is just a half of a half of a half. Now, I don't have you arrested because I didn't invite you into my house. I don't know why you're there. It scares me, right? So, but the idea here is basically the same. The geologists are going to be looking inside crystals, inside rocks, and trying to see how much of the pie is left. And they're going to use the amount of time that it takes for that pie to go down, half by half by half, in order to estimate what the age of the pie is, right? In this case, of these crystals. So, geologists like to use, fancier diagrams, but this is the same thing. Up at the top, this is the full pie. This is the first half. That would be one night of Dr. Ross eating pie, secret in the closet away from all the kids. And then there's the second night, then there's the third night, right? And you get progressively smaller amounts of pie. Now, we've got it on a slope like this because in geology, you're not just going to come across half the pie or a quarter of the pie. There's going to be times when you're like 75%, like the pie's only been eaten for a little while, right? The time has only been going on. You haven't had a full half-life yet. So we plot how much of the ratio of the parent and the daughter is found in the crystal on a graph like this, and that will tell us how many half-lives have gone through. And then we're going to multiply that number by whatever the time it takes for those half-lives to go through. For geology, we use about a half a dozen different types of radioactive decay items. These are ones that are going to have really long half-lives. These are ones that are going to take a long time to get to half of that pie. So in the video, they mentioned 2 forms of uranium, uranium-235 That was the one that was going quicker. It had more watches because uranium-235 is supposed to have a half-life of about 700 million years. It's a long time to lose half your pie. Okay, they're not eating fast enough, in my
Slow
opinion.
eater. The ice cream is going to melt.
That's right. It's going to get bad, right? It's going to get bad. But uranium-238 is even worse. It takes over 4.5 billion years for uranium-238 at the rates we measure today and extrapolating into the past. Okay, so this is how much it would take for something like that. So when this geologist is talking about the age of these crystals, what they're saying is by looking at both uranium-235 and 238, both clocks agreed it was 4.4 billion years old. This little tiny crystal fitting on the head of a pin in a rock unit out in Australia. And they're right, yeah, that is the oldest dated geological item that is considered to be part of Earth itself, not like a meteor that's come in and struck. So that's the basics behind how they're getting around to a date like that. And you can see that there's some other ones here: thorium, rubidium, potassium, etc. All of them have half-lives that we extrapolate out in terms of millions or billions of years. And we'll come back later. Obviously, tonight we're going to be talking a lot about carbon. Carbon-14 has a really small half-life, real short one, compared to all these others.
And by the way, Andrew is in the chat saying, your lead one, it says lead 308. Is that supposed to be 208?
Oh, did that say lead through it 308?
Andrew, you got the professor. Good job, Andrew. Does it say 308, lead 308?
Oh, it did. Yeah, that should have been 208. Yeah. Thanks. We have to.
Andrew, thanks for catching that typo, buddy. We stumped the professor. Okay, but it wasn't like a real stump. It was like a typo stump. So it's not official. We haven't gotten him to admit the Earth is billions of years old yet, but we'll keep trying.
No. But you caught a typo, and for that, I thank you. That's important that we fix that.
Okay, so I'm hearing, I get it. I understand that, if I measured an amount of carbon. Oh, by the way, D is wondering, when you said to do carbon-14 and they take the sample and basically totally destroy it and turn it into graphite, did you say they cover it in graphite, or they literally burn it and turn it into graphite?
Yeah, they incinerate it and then condense it down as graphite.
So it literally becomes graphite.
Yeah, and then incinerate it one more time before it goes into the final stage of the AMS.
Well, there you go, D. If you want to get something dated, it's going to destroy it. So
small sample, and you'll never see it again.
If you're not already a Creation member, let me encourage you, jump in and jump on board with us. You'll get a replay link. You get access to everything we do, past, present, and future, as a Creation member. And we love learning together. This really is a lot of fun. Bruce, thank you as well. We appreciate you being here. But please consider becoming a Creation member. You guys, for those of you that are members, thank you. You really are laying the foundation for us to be able to do ministry week after week and month after month and share amazing truths with the world. Well, guys, until next Monday night, my name is Eric Hovind. I love you, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of Creation Today and has been made possible because of the generous support of our Creation partners. To learn more about how you can partner with us, visit us at creationtoday.org/partner.